Do you remember the last time you lost control? That single moment when your heartbeat thundered in your chest, your hands trembled, and every word that spilled from your mouth felt like fire you couldn't put back. We all do. That is anger, the silent tyrant that rules more lives than any dictator in history. There's a man sitting alone in his room tonight. The lights are dim, the walls are quiet, but inside his mind, a storm is raging. He's been betrayed, not by a stranger, but by someone he trusted. His thoughts circle like vultures, each one sharper than the last. How could they do this? Why me? The more he thinks, the more he feeds the fire. He's not shouting, not breaking anything, but the fury lives in silence now, a poison spreading through his veins. He doesn't know it yet, but the person he's destroying isn't the one who hurt him. It's himself. 4 hours he replays the betrayal, word by word, imagining the perfect response he should have given, the confrontation that never happened. The mind is cruel like that. It keeps the wound open just to feel alive. And then in the stillness between his thoughts, a strange memory surfaces. A voice from a book he once read. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who ruled an empire and still fought wars within himself. The words echo faintly in his mind. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. The man breathes, but he doesn't understand it yet. Because when you're burning in anger, philosophy feels like water written on sand, beautiful but useless. He wants to believe it, but his pride resists. His emotions whisper that peace is weakness, that to forgive means to lose. The mind becomes a courtroom. Logic on one side, rage on the other. But this is where every Stoic's journey begins, not in peace but in conflict. The ancient philosophers were not born calm. They were soldiers, slaves, emperors, men who faced betrayal, death, humiliation, and still chose control over chaos. That choice is what separates them from the rest of us. And tonight, the man will make that same choice, or be consumed by the storm inside him. He closes his eyes and the first rule of Stoicism whispers through the noise. Do not be ruled by emotion. He repeats it to himself. Once, twice, again. The words don't feel real yet, but that's how change always begins. Not with a spark of understanding, but with a whisper of rebellion against your own nature. He takes a slow breath. The air feels heavy. He tries to watch his thoughts, not fight them. Each thought of anger, a flash, an image, a word. He sees it rise, peak, and dissolve. This is the first act of war against anger, to observe it without becoming it. Marcus once said that a person who is angry at the world is like someone who curses the wind, a full fighting nature. The man realizes he's been doing the same. The betrayal happened. The wound exists. But the suffering, that's something he's chosen to feed. He remembers the second whisper of Stoic wisdom. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. Suddenly, he begins to understand. Anger is not in the event, it's in the interpretation. What the Stoics knew, and what most of us forget, is that no one can harm your soul unless you open the door. The man sits quietly. For the first time in hours, he's not feeding the fire. He's watching it, and when you observe the flame long enough, it begins to starve. He whispers again, I have power over my mind. It's not easy. His body still feels tight, his breath uneven, but the moment he recognizes that his reaction is a choice, not an automatic truth, something inside him loosens. That's where it starts. The smallest moment of awareness, the breath between stimulus and response, is the space where peace is born. He doesn't yet know the other 7 rules that will transform him completely. But this first one, this act of not reacting, of choosing stillness in the middle of fire, is his first step toward mastering himself. As he opens his eyes, the night feels different. The room hasn't changed, but the man has. The storm is still outside, but inside a quiet rebellion has begun. And from that silence, the voice of Stoicism speaks again. And no man is free who is not master of himself. The war against anger has begun. Not by shouting, not by revenge, but by understanding. Have you ever wondered why 2 people can live through the same moment, and one walks away broken while the other walks away wiser? That question haunts him the next morning. The man from last night wakes up, but the world still feels heavy. The betrayal still echoes somewhere deep inside, like a bruise that doesn't fade even after the fight is over. He remembers his moment of stillness, the breath that silenced the storm, but peace is fragile. It slips easily. He walks to the mirror. The reflection looks tired. There are lines beneath his eyes that weren't there before, shadows that speak of sleepless nights. He stares at his reflection and wonders, why does pain stay even when we know better? That's when the second Stoic rule begins to whisper its truth. You cannot control events, only your interpretation of them. He thinks about that carefully. What does it really mean to interpret pain? Isn't pain just pain? Isn't betrayal just betrayal? But then he remembers, there was a time when smaller things didn't touch him. The traffic jam that once ruined his day, the rude comment online, the co-worker who ignored him, none of it had power over him when he was younger. So what changed? It wasn't the world, it was his lens. And that's the cruel secret of anger. It doesn't come from others, it comes from how we see others. The Stoics taught that the mind is like a mirror. It doesn't just reflect reality, it shapes it. The more warped the mirror, the more distorted the world appears. Epictetus once said, men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. That line hits him like lightning. If that's true, if the pain isn't in what happened, but in how he's holding it, then maybe he isn't a victim after all. Maybe he's the sculptor of his own suffering. He looks again at his reflection, but this time he doesn't see the man who was wronged. He sees the man who gave power to the wrong. He thinks of the friend who betrayed him, the words that cut deep, the trust that vanished. For days he thought of that person as an enemy. But now he wonders, what if they were just a mirror reflecting a part of him he refuses to face? His need for control. His expectation that others should act according to his script. The realization stings, but it's also freeing. Because if pain begins in the mind, then peace can be built there too. He remembers something Seneca wrote centuries ago. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The line repeats in his head like a heartbeat. Maybe that's what Stoicism really is. Not pretending the world doesn't hurt, but refusing to let imagination turn hurt into hell. He decides, right there in front of the mirror, to test this rule. For one day, he will not label events as good or bad. He will not curse the traffic, not replay the betrayal, not judge the silence of others. He will see everything as it is. No story, no emotion, just fact. And something strange happens. As the hours pass, the world starts to quiet. The same world, the same people, the same problems, but the noise inside him begins to fade. It's as if he stepped out of his own thoughts and started watching life from the outside. He's not perfect yet. The anger still knocks sometimes, but now he recognizes it. He sees it like a visitor, not a master, and that awareness alone gives him strength. He learns a new kind of power, not the power to control others, but to choose how to see them. That's the foundation of inner peace. And here's something you should know. If you stay till the end of this video, you'll learn how the final Stoic rule transforms all the others into one simple truth that can make you unshakable. A truth that even emperors lived and died for. So don't stop here, because this journey, like all great ones, gets harder and more rewarding the deeper you go. The man takes one last look at the mirror. He doesn't look angry anymore. He looks awake. The reflection hasn't changed, the perspective has. And from that silence, another Stoic voice rises within him. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. He smiles faintly. The mirror shows the same face, but the man behind it is no longer the same. Have you ever tried to control something, or someone, that was never really yours to control? It's a quiet kind of madness, isn't it? The belief that if we just say the right words, do the right thing, or hold on a little tighter, the world will bend to our will, but it never does. Poor will. The more we try to control it, the more it slips away. The man sits at his desk, a cup of cold coffee beside him. He's calmer now. At least he thinks he is. The mirror from the morning still lingers in his mind, but as he opens his phone, the calm begins to fracture. A message. From the same person who betrayed him. 3 words. Can we talk? He feels the storm return. That old familiar weight pressing against his chest. His mind races, already building arguments, defenses, revenge. Every emotion that had gone silent now screams again. He stares at the message, caught between the urge to respond and the desire to disappear. The question becomes a battlefield. What should I do? That's when another fragment of Stoic wisdom surfaces, this time from Epictetus. And some things are up to us, and some are not. It sounds simple, but it's the hardest truth in the world. Because the human heart hates limits. It wants control over everything. People, outcomes, time, even the past. But the Stoics understood something deeper. Control is not about dominance, it's about focus. The man sets his phone down. His hands tremble slightly, but he breathes. He remembers the rule. The only thing you truly control is yourself. Your thoughts, your actions, your choices. Everything else belongs to fate. He whispers to himself, do I control their apology? Their guilt? Their truth? No. Do I control my anger? Maybe, if he chooses to. So he doesn't reply. Not yet. Instead, he walks to the window. Outside, the world moves on, indifferent to his emotions. Cars pass, people laugh, clouds drift, and it strikes him how small his storm really is compared to the endless sky. That's when he understands the third Stoic rule. Focus only on what is within your control, and peace will follow. He laughs softly, almost bitterly at first, because it feels so backwards. How can doing less give you more power? But that's the paradox of Stoicism. Freedom isn't found in control, it's found in surrender. He remembers Marcus Aurelius again, the emperor who could command legions, yet still wrote in his journal, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The man realizes that every time he tries to control someone else, he loses a piece of himself. Every time he argues, manipulates, or obsesses over an outcome, he becomes a prisoner of what he cannot change. So he makes a decision. Not an emotional one, not impulsive, a stoic one. He deletes the message, not out of pride, but out of peace, because he knows the truth. Closure doesn't come from them, it comes from within. For the rest of the day, he carries that silence like armor. Every frustration, the slow internet, the delayed call, the careless driver, becomes a test. And for the first time, he feels powerful not because he controls the world, but because the world no longer controls him. He's learning to draw a line in the sand, one side for fate, one for himself. On his side lie thoughts, choices, and actions. On the other, everything else. The weather, the past, the opinions of others. He can't change those, and he no longer needs to. That's the essence of Stoicism. Not apathy, but discipline. To care deeply about what you can shape and to let go of what you can't. By nightfall, he feels lighter. The world hasn't changed, but its weight has. And in that quiet realization, he finds something he didn't expect. Control, not through force, but through freedom. He sits down, opens his journal, and writes a single line. Today, I chose peace over power. He smiles faintly, closes the book, and for the first time in a long while, sleeps without replaying the past. Because he finally understands the key to mastering anger isn't in controlling others, it's in mastering yourself. Have you ever held on to something so tightly that it began to hurt, and yet you still couldn't let it go? It could be a memory, a mistake, a person, or a version of yourself you can't stop chasing. You tell yourself that holding on gives you strength, that it's loyalty or justice or closure. But deep down, you know the truth. It's fear. Fear that if you let go, you'll have nothing left. The man wakes up the next morning feeling heavy again. Yesterday, he learned control. Today, he faces its shadow. He opens the window, but the air feels stale. He deleted the message, yet it still lingers in his mind, whispering unfinished words. The past doesn't die easily. It clings to every corner of memory. He makes coffee and sits by the window. Outside, a tree sheds its leaves. One by one, they drift away quiet, effortless. He watches and wonders, why can nature release so easily while humans bleed to hold on? That's when Seneca's words come to him. He who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary. He takes a deep breath. The lesson is simple, yet painfully hard to live. To let go is not to forget. It's to accept that the story doesn't need your control to end. The Stoics believed every attachment beyond reason invites suffering because everything you love will eventually change or leave. He looks at his phone again. It's silent. His mind fills in the silence with what-ifs, with ghosts of conversations that never happened. That's when he realizes, this is the real battle, not the betrayal, not the words, the constant replay, the invisible chain that keeps him tethered to pain. He remembers something Epictetus said, when you are attached to something, remember that it is only a loan, not a possession. The world, the people, even our emotions, all of it borrowed, all of it temporary. To cling is to fight the natural flow of life. He closes his eyes and imagines himself standing by a river, holding a handful of water. The harder he squeezes, the faster it escapes. Only when he loosens his grip does the water stay cool in his palm. That is what letting go feels like. Not losing, but allowing. He decides to try something new. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" he asks, "What is this trying to teach me?" The question changes everything. It shifts him from victim to student, from pain to purpose. He spends the day in silence. No music, no phone, no distractions. Just thought. And in that silence, he begins to see the hidden truth. Holding on doesn't keep the past alive. It keeps you from living. The world moves whether you move with it or not. And anger, once held too long, becomes a prison you build for yourself, with walls made of a should have and a why me. As the sun sets, the man steps outside. The wind is cool, the sky fading from gold to indigo. He thinks again of the tree, the leaves falling not because they are weak, but because the season demands it. He whispers almost to himself, and maybe strength isn't holding on. Maybe it's knowing when to let go. He looks up at the darkening sky and feels the smallest trace of freedom. Not the loud kind, not the one that shouts or celebrates, but the quiet freedom that comes when you stop fighting what already is. That's the fourth Stoic rule. Let go of what you cannot keep and peace will follow. He smiles faintly. For the first time, he doesn't feel chained to the past. The memory is still there, yes, but it no longer hurts to look at it, because it no longer owns him. And maybe that's all life asks of us, to live fully in each moment, to love without clinging, and to release without bitterness when it's time. As he turns away from the window, the wind carries the last leaf off the tree. He watches it vanish into the dusk, and somehow it feels like a promise. Have you ever said something in anger and regretted it the moment it left your lips? It's one of life's cruelest tricks. How a few seconds of rage can destroy what years of patience built. We always think we're justified in the moment, only to realize later that anger never speaks truth. It only speaks pain. The man knows this now. It's been days since the message he deleted. The quiet feels both heavy and healing. But peace is never permanent. It must be practiced every day, like breathing. This morning, he walks into work, ready to leave the past behind. But the world, as always, tests those who think they've mastered themselves. His co-worker, the same one who once betrayed him for credit on a project, stands near his desk, smiling as if nothing ever happened. And then, with just a few careless words, that old wound rips open again. The co-worker jokes about the betrayal, lightly, sarcastically, not realizing the sting those words still carry. The man's chest tightens, his heartbeat quickens. The storm he thought he'd conquered roars back, fierce and sudden. Inside, two voices battle for dominance. One shouts, "Say something." Put him in his place. Don't let him win again. The other whispers, "Wait, breathe. This is your test." He grips the edge of his desk. The urge to lash out is almost physical, like a fire begging for oxygen. But then he remembers the fifth Stoic rule. You cannot control what others do, but you can always control your response. And for a brief silent moment, he sees it. The space between stimulus and reaction. That small, invisible gap where freedom lives. He remembers something Viktor Frankl once wrote. A man who endured the unendurable. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. The man realizes that space is everything. It's the difference between chaos and calm, between weakness and mastery. He takes one slow breath, then another. He doesn't speak, he doesn't fight, he just watches. The co-worker waits for a reaction, doesn't get one, and laughs awkwardly before walking away. The moment passes, the fire fades. What could have become an argument, a scene, a spiral, ends in silence. But that silence isn't emptiness, it's power. The man feels it deep inside, the victory of restraint. It doesn't look dramatic, there's no applause, no visible win. But inside something shifts. The fire that once burned uncontrollably is now under his command. Later that day, he writes in his journal, "A power isn't in the reaction, it's in the pause." He understands what the Stoics meant when they said anger, if not restrained, is more harmful to us than to the injury that provokes it. Because when you react, you hand your peace to someone else. You let them decide your state of mind. But when you respond calmly, wisely, deliberately, you reclaim your power. He begins to practice this everywhere, in traffic, in meetings, in moments of frustration. Whenever emotion rises, he looks for that small, sacred space before response. Sometimes he fails, but each failure teaches him more than success ever could. And over time, he discovers something strange. The less he reacts, the more control he has over life itself. The less he speaks in anger, the more his words begin to matter. That's the quiet magic of Stoicism. It doesn't make you emotionless. It makes you invincible to emotions that once ruled you. That night, as he walks home, he passes by a street musician playing softly beneath a flickering light. The world moves at its usual chaotic pace, cars honking, people rushing, but he walks through it untouched, steady, deliberate. Because now he knows the world will always test you, but how you respond, that's where your freedom lives. He smiles, not because the world is easier, but because he's stronger. Have you ever asked yourself why life feels unfair? Why bad things happen to good people, and peace seems to favor those who don't deserve it? It's a question as old as humanity, and one that has broken more hearts than time can count. The man walks alone through the city tonight. The sky above him is dark, heavy with clouds, and the air smells like rain. Every step echoes softly on the pavement. For the first time in weeks, he feels quiet. Not the quiet of calm, but the quiet of exhaustion. He's done everything right. Stayed patient. Let go. Tried to control only himself. But still, the world remains unpredictable. Work is unstable. Friends have grown distant. The betrayal, though faded, left scars that ache when silence gets too long. And as he looks at the indifferent city lights, the thought hits him. What's the point of peace if the world never changes? That's when the sixth Stoic rule surfaces. Accept what you cannot change, and you will be unbreakable. It sounds simple, but it's the hardest rule of them all, because acceptance feels like surrender, and no one wants to surrender to pain. Yet the Stoics knew something deeper. Resistance multiplies suffering. He stops by a small park bench and sits down. The wind picks up, scattering leaves at his feet. Somewhere far off, thunder growls. He remembers Marcus Aurelius' words, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He repeats it quietly. What stands in the way becomes the way, and it begins to make sense. Maybe life isn't meant to be easy. Maybe every obstacle is a lesson in disguise. Maybe peace isn't the absence of pain. It's the ability to stand still within it. He looks at his own life and realizes how often he's tried to bargain with fate. He wanted the world to play fair, people to be kind, events to unfold according to his expectations. But life was never built on his permission. It simply is. Epictetus once said, "I don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will. Then your life will flow well." He thinks about that for a long time. What would it mean to wish for things to happen exactly as they do? It sounds unnatural, even foolish. But maybe that's the doorway to freedom. To stop arguing with reality and start walking alongside it. The rain begins to fall. Slow at first, then steady. He doesn't move. He lets it soak his shirt, his skin. For once, he doesn't rush to hide or run. He just sits there, feeling it. Cold, cleansing, real. And as the rain falls harder, he understands. Acceptance is not giving up. It's saying, this is what's happening. I can either fight it and drown, or embrace it and grow. He feels something unexplainable. Not joy, not sadness, but stillness. The kind of stillness that comes when you stop demanding the universe explain itself. When he finally stands drenched and calm, the storm doesn't feel hostile anymore. It feels necessary. Like a mirror for the chaos inside him. One that finally reflects peace. The man smiles faintly as he walks home. His clothes cling to him, heavy with rain, but his mind feels weightless. Because for the first time, he's not trying to fix life. He's learning to live it. That's the sixth Stoic truth. That freedom isn't found in changing what is, but in accepting it completely. Because once you stop fighting the river, you realize it's been carrying you exactly where you need to go. As he steps through his door, the storm fades behind him. The world is still uncertain, but his heart is not. And in that quiet, he finally understands what all the Stoics tried to teach. Peace isn't found when life stops testing you. There's a truth most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. Everything ends. The laughter, the moments, the people we love, all of it slips through our fingers no matter how tightly we try to hold on. For a long time, the man feared endings. He thought loss meant failure, that change meant chaos, that time was his enemy. But the longer he walks this path, the more he realizes it's impermanence that gives life its beauty. He stands by his window one morning, sunlight pouring across the floor. The rain from last night has cleared, leaving the air sharp and clean. A cup of warm tea rests between his hands. Outside, the city hums softly, the world moving, breathing, alive. He watches as people rush to work, as a child laughs at a bird flying past, as clouds drift lazily across the sky. Everything is changing, even as he watches, and for the first time he doesn't feel afraid. The Stoics taught that death and change are not enemies, they are part of nature's rhythm. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things that are, and to make new things like them." He whispers those words quietly, almost as a prayer. He remembers the people who left, the moments that faded, the places he'll never return to. Once those memories filled him with sadness. Now they feel like small gifts, reminders that he lived, that he felt, that he was here. The man walks through the park again, where the trees are shedding their last autumn leaves. Each one falls in silence, a dance between gravity and grace. He stops to watch, realizing how even in decay there's beauty. He thinks of Seneca's words, "Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end." It's strange how long it takes to understand something so simple. Nothing lasts. And that's why everything matters. He kneels to pick up a single fallen leaf. It's red, veined, fragile. He holds it gently, studying its imperfections, its quiet dignity. This leaf once caught sunlight, gave shade, breathed life. Now it returns to the earth, completing the cycle it was always meant for. And in that moment, the man feels something like peace. Not the kind that depends on comfort or certainty, but the kind that comes from finally accepting the truth. Life is fleeting, and that's what makes it sacred. He smiles, a small, honest smile. The fear that once chased him feels distant now. Because he's no longer trying to escape time, he's learning to walk beside it. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in golden fire. He stands there till the last light fades, watching it disappear without sadness. Because he knows it will rise again. Not because it must, but because that's what it does. The Stoics called this understanding amor fati, the love of fate, to not just accept what happens, but to love it, to embrace it as part of the grand pattern. Everything changes, everything fades. And yet, nothing is truly lost, because each moment lives on, not in time, but in the soul that witnessed it. As night falls, the man whispers to himself, "I will not mourn the end, I will honor the passing. I will live fully, knowing that nothing lasts forever, and that's why it's worth everything." And with that, he finally understands the seventh rule of Stoicism, the wisdom of impermanence. The secret to peace is not in holding on, but in letting go. Because only when you stop clinging to life, can you truly begin to live it. Have you ever truly been alone? Not lonely, but alone. In the kind of silence that presses against your thoughts and asks who you really are when there's no one left to see you? Most people fear that silence. They drown it out with noise, distraction, conversation, anything to avoid meeting the stranger within. But the man has reached a place where silence is no longer something to escape. It's a mirror he must face. For months he's been untangling the roots of his anger. He's learned acceptance, patience, humility, but still something lingers beneath the surface. A quiet restlessness, a faint ache that comes when the world grows still. One evening he turns off every light in his small apartment. No music, no phone, no glow from the outside world. Just the sound of his own breathing. He sits in the dark, eyes closed, feeling the rhythm of his pulse. For the first time, he doesn't feel the emptiness. He listens to it. The Stoics believed solitude was not a punishment, but a test. Seneca wrote, "A nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company." As he breathes in the stillness, the man realizes how much of his life had been spent reacting to people, to words, to judgments, to the chaos around him. He'd been like a leaf in the wind, blown in every direction by what others thought or did. But here, in this silence, there is no wind. There's only him and the truth he has avoided. He remembers the Stoic idea that a man's true strength lies in what he can endure without applause, without comfort, without anyone watching. Slowly he begins to understand. He doesn't need validation to exist. He doesn't need to be seen to be real. The world may forget him, but he will not forget himself. In solitude, he feels the vastness of life expand. Every thought echoes louder, every emotion sharper, more honest. He meets the part of himself that hides behind anger, the fragile, uncertain part that wanted control because it feared being unseen. He does not run from it this time. He sits with it. And as he does, something remarkable happens. The fear begins to dissolve. But through resistance, but through presence, he whispers almost to himself, I'm enough, even here, even when no one claps, even when no one knows my name. That's when he understands the eighth and final rule of Stoicism. The courage to be alone is the root of unbreakable peace. Because when you can stand in silence without needing the world to fill it, you are no longer its prisoner. When you can look inward and not tremble, you have mastered the one thing the world can never take from you, yourself. And so the man stands once more, the night air cool around him. The city outside hums with distant life, but inside there is stillness, not emptiness, wholeness. He takes a deep breath and lets it out slowly, the faintest smile forming. The war within is over. There is no anger left to destroy, no storm left to conquer, only a quiet strength born from understanding. The journey that began with pain ends here, with peace. And in that peace he finds the one truth all Stoics come to know. You cannot control the world, but you can always control what happens within you. What if peace was never something to find, but something to return to? That question lingers in his mind as dawn breaks across the horizon. The first light touches the rooftops, spilling warmth across his room. For a long time he just sits there, breathing it in. The silence, the glow, the stillness that feels like truth itself, He has walked through storms of emotion, of loss, of anger. He has fought with his own mind and questioned the meaning of control. But now, as everything inside him settles, he realizes that the fight was never with the world. It was always with himself. 8 rules, 8 lessons. Each one carved from pain, from thought, from the quiet observation of life itself. He remembers them all, not as commandments, but as reminders, acceptance, control, reflection, humility, patience, perspective, impermanence, solitude, each one a thread in the tapestry of Stoicism. Each one a small step toward mastery of the mind. He smiles faintly, not because he has reached perfection, but because he no longer needs to. The man rises and steps to the window once more. Outside the city stirs, people waking, engines starting, life returning. But for the first time he doesn't feel apart from it. He feels in tune with it. Every sound, every breath, every fleeting moment, it all belongs to the same flow, and he is part of that flow. He pours a cup of tea, the same ritual he's followed for months. But now each motion feels different, calmer, slower, intentional. He understands what Marcus Aurelius meant when he wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He has found that strength. Not in dominance, not in detachment, but in awareness. The past no longer holds him. The future no longer frightens him. What remains is the present, and the deep knowing that this moment, right now, is enough. He steps outside. The air is cold, crisp, alive. He walks down the same street where he once rushed, once burned with anger and unrest. But now, every step feels deliberate, grounded in peace. He passes strangers, each lost in their own thoughts, their own storms. And though they don't know him, he sends them silent gratitude. Because he knows now that every soul carries its own battle. Every heart seeks its own calm. He does not preach, he does not teach. He embodies what he's learned. That is the final Stoic truth. Peace is not in words, it's in being. As he reaches the end of the street, he looks up at the rising sun and whispers quietly, "I am no longer controlled by what I feel. I am guided by what I understand." And that understanding is simple. Anger is not the enemy. It's the teacher. Pain is not punishment. It's the path. Every moment, even the hardest one, is an invitation to return to yourself. He takes one final deep breath, eyes closed, face to the warmth of the light. The world moves around him, unpredictable, uncontrollable, alive. But within, there is silence, not emptiness, not numbness, but a steady flame. And that is how peace feels, not loud, not perfect, just steady. The story doesn't end here because the journey never really ends. Every day, every challenge, every setback, they will all return. But this time, he will meet them differently, calmly, patiently, like an old friend. Because once you've mastered yourself, the world can no longer shake you. He walks forward, not seeking peace anymore, because peace now walks with him. And that is the Stoic way.